Welcome to the Net Profit Podcast with Ryan Kibler, your net profit CFO, helping business owners like you grow their net profit one episode at a time. And now your host, Ryan Kibler.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Net Profit Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Kibler, the Net Profit CFO. Today, I have a very good friend with me, Alay Yajnik, with law firm Success Group. Alay and I go back quite a ways, done several podcast episodes together. I'm excited, really excited to have him on the show again today. Anytime Alay and I get together, we have great conversations, a lot of great content for the audience, and I just love what Alay brings to the table. So, Alay, thank you so much for taking the time and doing another show with me.
Hey, thanks for having me on again, Ryan. It's great chatting with you. You know so much about law firms, and we always have great conversations together. And I loved having you on Lawyer Business Advantage as well. I think we did, 4 or 5 episodes together, and those were all, I don't think I told you this, but those were all really highly rated in terms of number of listeners. So you can come back anytime.
I greatly appreciate that too. And yeah, I mean, I enjoy sitting on that side of the table, love to give back and kind of put, my knowledge out there because I can't help everybody. And I know that you come from the same mindset, right? And same kind of goals of love to put my knowledge out there and help more law firms. So
Absolutely. Yeah, it's growing a law firm can be a really lonely journey, and not everyone is ready for, a fractional CFO or a law firm business coach. And so this is a great way for us to just kind of share little tidbits here and there and give listeners some ideas and some inspiration.
yeah, absolutely. Love that. Well, I want to get right into today's topic here because today we're going to be talking about hiring, and man, getting hiring right, I could definitely make an argument that's the most important thing in a law firm. I could make the argument. I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that statement?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because when I started working with law firms over 10 years ago, I started from the perspective of marketing and business development. That was really my focus. And what I quickly understood is I'd be working with these firms and they just take off, and then they boom hit a ceiling because they didn't have capacity to take on more work. And I realized the harder thing to do is actually to add capacity by growing your team in a law firm. That is way harder than marketing and business development. And in fact, it's much easier to bring on a new client than it is to bring on a new member of your team.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even think about the business development side. Most of the time I don't step into that world. That's why I love having you here too. I think for me, that argument comes down to, I could say pricing. It's either pricing or hiring, I think is, man, if I had to put a number one, if you can nail this, it's got to be pricing or hiring. But I have seen exactly what you're talking about, where a law firm kind of hits a ceiling and they can definitely get kind of in that position where which came first, the chicken or the egg? Do I need to, I need to go higher, but I also need 20 cases to give that lawyer that I want to go hire. And so it can be a tough tough position.
It is. It is. And usually when we run into this, and this is kind of I think it's the preface to my book, there's this attorney who is just cranking, and she just brought on this brand new client. And instead of being thrilled, because this was a big client, she felt terrible. She felt anxious. She felt scared. She's like, this is not fun at all. I don't feel great that I brought on this client because now I have to do all this work and I'm already super busy. And we run into that situation all the time where these attorneys have built successful practices. They are correctly not turning down business, but then they end up with way more than they can handle. And that ends up running them ragged and, affecting their life and, affecting their joy in running a law firm and practicing law. And so in that situation, to your point, they don't have enough work for 2 attorneys, but they have more than enough work for one. And so they're already behind the 8 ball when it comes to hiring.
Yeah. And that, like, I know I got to that point in my business at one point as I grew, and that becomes a lot of pressure because, revenue and sales, I think in business, has kind of become a vanity metric and everybody looks at it and wants the top line to grow. But that comes with the pressure of I have to serve those clients on the back end, right? And just like you're talking about, that's stressful.
Yeah, and I get it to your point about pressure. The biggest issue I've heard from attorneys who are looking to make that first or second or third hire is, look, I don't want to have that responsibility of having to make payroll What if something goes wrong with the practice and now I have to let somebody go? And the conversation we have with them is, look, the current situation is not sustainable. You either need to back off on the number of clients you're taking on, or you need to add capacity. And if you want to add capacity, think about this. When they come on board and you hand your cases off to them, what are you going to do with all that free time? You're going to go out and make it rain, right? That's what we do. And you're going to have more money to do it as well. And so that is a big part of it. It's shifting that idea from, okay, I'm going to be doing all the work and doing everything else in the firm, to I brought on this attorney or paralegal who's going to do a lot of the work that I've been doing. And that's going to free me up to go out there and get more business.
Yep. Love that. Because there is definitely an opportunity cost, especially when it comes to time, of you not making that hire. And, the other piece that I heard you talk about in there, well, what happens if something goes wrong and I have to, let somebody go or something like that? And I think if you have a, attorney, or if you're an attorney out there and you're kind of thinking that way, I encourage clients to break things down. It can be, stressful and overwhelming to think about, man, I'm going to hire somebody and I'm going to pay them $100,000. But when you break that down on a 26 pay periods a year or every 2 weeks, whatever you do, right? Like that $100,000 that you're paying that person becomes, $4,000 over 2 weeks or something similar to that, right? And so then if you're an attorney and you start thinking about, well, I can generate $4,000, right? And I think it makes things easier to kind of take it step by step.
It does. It really does. And the idea of the firm not doing well and having to let people go, that's a future problem. Most firms I know don't encounter that. Some I know have. I've had to lay people off before in my career, and it absolutely sucks, and I never want to do it again. But that is also a risk of growing. I mean, otherwise,
Yeah.
what are you going to do? You better be happy with where you are, because that's exactly where you're going to stay.
Yeah. Love that quote for sure. And I think especially, you get to the point where you're working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks because you don't have enough for another full-time person yet. Like, I think for everyone's well-being, you can't stay there and be there long term. And you've got to move forward and make that next hire.
Yeah. And one of the big questions we get is, okay, so when do I do that? And when do I go out and hire somebody? And so we've put together a diagnostic. It's a really simple one. And your audience can listen to this and remember it and use it. It's called the 20-10-5 rule. I might have talked about this last time. I don't know. But it's a diagnostic that we use to look at several different aspects of a small law firm. So if you're the owner of a small law firm and you're thinking about where your time goes in a given week, it should be around 20 hours of client work, whether you're flat fee or not. 20 hours of client work.
Yep.
10 hours of marketing and business development. Yes, I know that sounds high, but bear with me here. And then 5 hours of law firm admin. And so what we can do is we can break these numbers down, 20, 10, 5. In the 20 case, if you have more than 20 hours of work consistently, you need to hire somebody or figure out a smarter way of doing it so it takes up less of your time, because you're going to need 10 hours a week to really make it rain right and to grow your firm. And that includes consultations. And that time goes pretty fast. And the 5 hours of admin, oftentimes we see that much higher. That's when they bring in someone like yourself to take a lot of that, accounting, financial work that they're doing themselves and really hand it to a professional, and that frees them up.
Yep. Love that. I love, how you break everything down. And I want to go back and start at the beginning of that. 20 hours of client work a week puts, you as the owning or managing partner at about 1,000 hours a year. I just did the math on the side. I didn't know that off the top of my head.
Nice.
Full disclosure, right? So about 1,000 hours a year. And if you're an attorney out there listening, you might think, well, that doesn't sound like a lot. Right now I'm billing, 1,600 hours or 1,700 hours in a year. But I think you've got to remember, Alay, you and I are pushing them to shift into that owning role and cut back on their hours, charge the highest price at their firm, and then focus on doing the other things, which is important, like making it rain, like you talked about.
Yeah, you got it. And the 20 hours a week is actually quite a lot for owning a law firm. It's pretty funny. I'll sit down with clients and they'll have a revenue goal.
Yeah.
It'll be a pretty modest one because usually they're solo for having this conversation, and they sit down and we map out how much the firm would make if they billed 20 hours a week. And it's a coin flip, but half the time, if they just build 20 hours a week, along with everything else they're doing and what their team is doing, they're going to beat their revenue target and they're going to beat their income target. So that is not a little amount of work when you're talking about business development and law firm admin and everything else that's going on.
Yeah. And I think on the business development side, for 10 hours a week, if you're doing half-hour consultations, you do 5 or 6 consultations in a week, and all of a sudden you've burned 3 hours.
Yeah.
And you're probably getting paid for those, but that is taking your time, and that's part of the business development hours you guys allocate.
Yep. You go to a few coffee meetings, you go to a few networking meetings, you go to a bar association meeting, boom, you're there.
Yeah.
So that can happen really, really fast. And for you litigators, I know your hours vary dramatically depending on the week. And so what we do for litigators is we just multiply it by 4 and look at it on a monthly basis. So it becomes the 80-40-20 rule. And you look at it over the course of a month. That way, if you have a trial or prep or something like that, it all kind of sorts itself out over that period of time.
Yeah. Love that too. And I think that helps them really apply the rule in a way that makes sense, because obviously they could have a week where it's like, I'm stuck in court. Right.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Love that. We've got good rules of thumb there. Okay. So we've got a lawyer that's not balanced with the 20-10-5 rule. And let's just say all of their week is being taken up with billable hours. Let's just say it's 35 hours in a week, 36 hours. So then let's walk them through the process. Some best practices when it comes to making that hire. Yeah, let's hit some of the top things there.
Sure. Well, the first thing they need to do is they need to convince themselves that they can afford to hire somebody at 35 hours a week. So if we assume that they're going to do the 20, then they can take 15 and hand it off to an attorney or a paralegal or whomever. So that person is going to be billing 15 hours a week, right? Pretty quickly. Ultimately more, but let's say it's the 15 is what was handed to them, assuming no growth in the firm at all. Then what the attorney needs to do is figure out, based on what they're going to bill the person out at and what they're paying the person, how many hours of billing time does it take for the firm to break even on that person? Meaning they're not losing money on the person. They can pay the person's salary, no problem. Usually it's about 10 hours a week in general. And if they're in there billing 15 hours a week, great. You're actually making money on that person from day one, assuming they're well qualified and can do the job, and you're not writing off a whole bunch of their time and all those caveats.
Yep.
So oftentimes the break even on it is pretty fast. It's faster than what most attorneys think.
Yep, for sure. And I would argue too, again, because we hit a little bit on opportunity cost and the hours that you're losing, and not being able to, not being able to go out and business develop and sign more cases. I would venture to bet that if you got an attorney spending 35 billable hours, the other 5 is probably going to admin and taking care of those things, because in their mind they're like, I don't need to go generate more cases. No way. Right?
Yeah.
I don't need more work.
I don't want more work.
Yep. Yep. So they're not doing any business development. And so I would venture to say, even if you hired somebody and it was break even, quote unquote, right? As far as the number of hours that they were doing was just covering their salary just to get started, I think because of the opportunity cost and your ability to get back out there and spend those business development hours every week, that's going to produce results over time. I think even if you're, again, break even, quote unquote, you're still getting ahead and prepping yourself to take that next leap and grow your firm.
Absolutely. You have a chance to get to know your kids again and take some time off and take a vacation too. So these are all the benefits that come with hiring. And then, so once they've made had that internal dialogue or talked with you or talked with me or somebody to figure this out, and they've convinced themselves that, yep, makes sense to hire. The question is, how do we go about it? So there's a question of who you should hire. Typically, you want to hire someone who's going to bring in revenue to the firm. So an example of who not to go hire is not to go hire an HR person, someone who's going to cost the firm money, but not make the firm money. You want to hire a paralegal or an attorney, or maybe someone who you can bill out as a legal secretary. That way, they're bringing in money into the firm, which means they can pay for themselves.
Yep.
That's our goal. So that's usually the first step, is to identify, do you want an attorney, a paralegal, or a legal secretary? And then you go and you develop a hiring strategy to go get that person.
Yeah. And we can, kind of dive into hiring strategy a little bit next, developing that strategy. I mean, what angle do you normally recommend that lawyers kind of start with and approach with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is the tightest labor market I've seen. It's probably tighter than it was during the pandemic, if that's possible, especially in certain areas of law like family law, where it's just insane right now.
Yeah.
So developing a strategy, it's really less of a strategy, Ryan, and more of just a full court press. Like, it's
Yeah.
like we just need to try everything. But the one thing that people don't spend enough time on, and they often overlook entirely, is leveraging their existing network.
Yeah.
And I talk about this in the book of building your dream team. You always want to make sure that if you could wave a magic wand and have people who you know and trust, specific individuals on your team, that you've got them written down on a list. Because when it comes time to hire, those are the first people you reach out to.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone or shoot them a text and say, hey, can we talk real quick? And say, look, my firm's growing. I'm looking to hire. This is the kind of position I'm looking to hire for. I really trust and respect the work that you do. Do you know anyone like yourself that might be interested in a role like this? And see what they have to say. Sometimes they will uh, be able to recommend you somebody. Oftentimes, or sometimes, I shouldn't say oftentimes, sometimes, they might chuckle or something and say, hey, I might be interested, which of course is wonderful. And
Yep.
that cuts through any labor market that's out there. And it's often overlooked beyond all the LinkedIn posts and the recruiters and all the other stuff.
Yeah. Love that. And I think the other big benefit, in my opinion, that goes along with that, when you kind of build that team and they're people that, you've networked with and they're people that you get along with and respect, a lot of times they are probably going to have core values that line up with yours. And so,
Bingo.
like, I think, I completely agree with you. Your current network is overlooked. My first hire actually came from my current network. And again, like a lot of times because they're people that you get along with, I think, what was it? Like Seth Godin or Patrick Lencioni talks about people in your tribe. But because they're kind of in your tribe and you get along with them, a lot of times you get the benefit of they probably share in some of the same core values that you do, which is obviously super helpful for culture and the firm that you're trying to build.
Absolutely. Totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So that's really what all there is to it. And then, you execute your hiring strategy, whether it's that, because that has to be part of everything, but then also maybe you do LinkedIn, maybe you do recruiter, maybe you post to your bar association or your law school alumni association, but you get the word out and then you get candidates go through your interview process. And this is really what I find happens at that point. When someone comes on board, oftentimes the attorney is too busy to ramp them up properly, to bring them up to speed properly.
Yeah.
And that really sucks because then you've got this amazing candidate, but they're off to a slow start. They're off to a frustrating start because the attorney doesn't have the bandwidth to train this candidate up. And so that's another reason not to wait too long to hire, because you're going to have to train them a little bit, at
Yeah.
least on how you do things.
Yeah. And I think, probably a lot of the listeners and myself included in LA, probably for you, we all have at some time or another been through an onboarding process that we're like, this kind of sucks. Right. And that definitely, like, just in my mind immediately, like I go back to an experience that I've had. And, that feeling on the inside is like really not good, makes you feel, yeah,
It's
uneasy.
like it's like 3 days and you still don't have a phone or an email address. You're
Yeah.
twiddling your thumbs, going, "What am I doing here?"
Yep. Yes. And I think for someone that you bring in that probably aligns with your core values and, is the right candidate, is the person that maybe even you targeted and you wanted, making sure that they come in and, have great first impressions of you, super, super important. And you really, you help attorneys put together that like onboarding plan, like, and kind of direct them on this is, what you're going to do and how you're going to make your onboarding process great.
Yeah, the good news is this is all really simple stuff. It's not complicated. I promise you.
Yeah.
Practicing law is a lot harder than hiring somebody, even though it may not seem like it to attorneys. So it's a skill that attorneys can easily acquire. they can get good at, and they can delegate a lot of it. You can actually delegate most of the hiring and onboarding process. And if you can, you totally should.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point too. I mean, especially if you're that attorney out there that has too many hours a week that you're already doing yourself. I mean, being able to delegate, a good part of the process, not only just for the hiring piece, but for the onboarding piece, super, super important because otherwise, probably the only way that you're getting the hiring piece done is if you work extra hours in your week.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you may have to. A lot of our clients do because they waited too long to hire.
Yep.
And so it sucks, but they've got to dig in and invest the time. And it's going to suck for a while. And we're really upfront with them about that. And again, they have a choice.
Yep.
Drop some cases, take less work, or work a little bit harder for a while. And most of them choose to work harder for a little bit longer. And that's totally okay. But once you get past that second, third hire, you should be in a position to start delegating big pieces of that to an admin or an office manager.
For sure. And then moving forward, make that mistake once, maybe that you wait too late to hire, but you did a great job of really laying out like here are the metrics you should look for. Here's when you know that it's time to hire. And, like I said, I mean, make that mistake probably once and then, after that, don't make it again and do it different next time.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny when it clicks because then they get this little, it's a big smile when and they start to realize, oh my God, I need to hire more and I need to hire often. And the more I hire, the faster we grow.
Yeah.
And that's when things get really fun.
Yeah, I think hiring, does really open things up and gives the owner really an opportunity to be the CEO and be the owner of the company. And
You got
getting to
it.
that, yeah, I mean, getting to that level, super important.
Yep. And they can continue to practice law and work the cases they really want to work. And the other stuff they can, and the other tasks they can push out to their team.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. Any other, final points, that you feel like we should hit on hiring, while we're here that maybe we missed? I think we covered a lot of the process and what it should look like, some good metrics to kind of look at, kind of a little bit on where the market is today, really tight market. I'm seeing that with my clients as well. Any other best practices you feel like we should hit on?
Yeah, there is one that jumps to mind. So the way the book is laid out, the book's name is Staffing Up the Attorney's Guide to Hiring Top Talent. It's laid out so you can read it in like 90 minutes or 2 hours. It's a super easy read. If you're listening to it on Audible, I think you can get through it in about 90 minutes. So either way, it's a quick, easily digestible thing. And then the first section of the book is some of the hiring mistakes that people make.
Yeah.
And so the one we haven't talked about yet is who they hire.
Mm,
Oftentimes, especially small firms who are cash strapped, they are going to be hiring uh, really, really inexperienced people because those inexperienced people they can get for less.
yeah.
And oftentimes, they're really, really mindful of their cash flow. And so they end up, hiring someone who maybe is straight out of law school or has a year of experience under the belt as an attorney, or maybe just got, their paralegal certification. And so turning the question around, Ryan, why do you think that might be a problem?
Well, I mean, especially if you're that attorney that's overwhelmed, you already have too many hours of work for you to cover yourself. The idea that you can not only onboard somebody and show them how you do things, but also train them on the area of law that you're in, plus, them being like, I'll call them a young associate attorney. There's some areas of the law they're going to have to research, which is where some of their hours are going to go. And I would also say, while you're training that person up and they're inefficient, you're also writing off a good number of their hours, most likely, which also makes it harder for them to cover their payroll costs that they are to the firm. That's what I would say. There's a few
That
pieces in there, but that's what I would say.
that is a perfect answer. I couldn't have said it any better myself, and I won't even try. And so as a result of that, I really encourage my attorney clients to hire the best person that they can afford
Yeah.
because that person, hiring someone who knows what they're doing, who is already independent, they can come in, they can take the work off of your plate, and things are much more likely to go according to plan. And the cool thing is, once you have that key person or one or two people, maybe it's a key attorney and a key paralegal, once you have that one or two people in place, you can hire straight out of school if you want, because now you've got people in place who can do the teaching.
Yep. Yeah, and yeah, the other thing that I'll bring up there is I actually like getting the outside perspective from another firm, from from experience, right? So let's just say you're a family law lawyer and you go out and you hire an attorney that has, let's just say, 4 or 5 years of experience working at another law firm. From my experience, law firms have different ways of doing things, and they definitely have different ways of billing. And each law firm, it seems like, kind of has their own quirks and has their own weird kind of, well, we don't bill this specific task because of this, right? And they have some sort of reason that goes with it. I like getting that outside perspective in. And I think as a business owner, you've got to be willing to innovate and change, and being open to and listening to the new hires that you bring in and different ways of doing things, I think just makes your law firm even better when you can take in some outside perspective and be open to changing some things.
You bet. I was just talking about this with a client yesterday. She interviewed 2 people today, and actually I have an email sitting here saying she just brought someone on board, which is great. And this was exactly the conversation, which was, we all want to hire someone who can come in and show us how to do their job better. Wouldn't
Yeah.
it be great if we hired someone and they came in and they not only knew how to do the job well, they knew how to do it better than we did. And so they're able to just drop in, cut loose, and make the whole firm better. That's what we all want.
Yeah.
Hard to get that though.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. That brings its own challenge, but I completely agree with that. And very cool that you had a client you were just talking about it with yesterday. Very cool.
Yeah, well, it's been kind of wild. We have one client who just brought on board a paralegal, and then I have another client, family law client in Southern California, who I think brought on a paralegal over the weekend, which is cool because that was tough.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The hiring market is tough right now. Well,
It is.
Alay, thank you so much again for coming on. I love this topic of hiring. Again, as I said at the beginning of the show, I think I could make an argument this might be the most important thing to get nailed down and get right. So I love your perspective on it. Highly recommend to my audience that they pick up your book. And I also want to give you an opportunity. Where is the best place that my audience can get connected with you and hire you if they would like?
Yeah, easiest way to do that is lawfirmsuccessgroup.com. I've got all the information on there. You can reach out to me. We'll jump on a call. There's no pressure or anything like that. Just there to help out and see if there's a potential fit down the road. All the information about the book is there and the podcast as well. They can check out some of the episodes that you and I did together.
For sure. Absolutely. Love that. Well, we will definitely make sure we get a link to your website down in the show notes. Again, Alay, thank you so much for taking the time and being a guest today.
Thanks for having me on, Ryan. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, until next time, everybody, go accelerate your profits. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Net Profit Podcast with Ryan Kimler. Make sure to subscribe or follow the show on your favorite podcast app. Don't forget to check the show notes for our guest contact information and to connect with Ryan on his website, netprofitcfo.com.